My next guest is Michelle Seijas. She is a Latina leader on a mission to honor the generations before her and to liberate the generations to come. Her passions and values led her to begin her career as a bilingual education teacher. Over her 15 years in K-12 schools, she was an instructional coach, elementary school vice principal, district coordinator, and high school principal. Eventually, she moved into the nonprofit world as the founding executive director of the Surge Institute in Oakland. There, she established and led a team focused on developing Black and Latinx education leaders to create transformative change for the youth and communities they served. As a trauma-informed certified coach, experienced consultant, educational leader, and former nonprofit executive, she has learned to be her authentic self in various contexts. She partners with leaders to grow their confidence, value their strengths, and create a clear vision for their life and career. Michelle has a special gift of facilitating and engaging experiences for people to step into their power and identify how they will live and lead with purpose. Welcome to the podcast, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
You know, if you would have asked me this question years ago, I would have given you something very literal and specific. But the place that I'm at in my life now and the years I've spent kind of reflecting on leadership now, I think the trenches are totally our mind and our mindset. And so if I think back to times when I was really feeling stuck or really deep in the work, a lot of times it was the thoughts that I was having about it or the ways that I wasn't taking care of my body to physically engage in that work. So if I go back to 2017, which is when I left K-12 education, I was stressed out, was managing, I was a high school principal and had a lot of different things going on. At that point, I was about 10 years into leadership. And I didn't know then what I know now about ways of reducing stress, of ways of navigating kind of the parts of the job that were not what energized me and got me excited. And I was trying to be all things to all people. And so I was trying to still hang out with teenagers and have a good time with them, but then still be available to be in classrooms and with teachers, helping my VP team to figure out their life journeys and then dealing with all the larger org things. And I also wanted to be a community member, so out and about in the community as well. And so trying to be all things to all people, not really having the tools to know how to manage all of the stress that I was under. I mean, I just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper until it got to the point where my body was screaming at me, we're not going to be able to keep doing this. And so at a certain point, health-wise, I had to go in and get a bunch of tests done on my heart and stuff like that. And I ended up being fine. And so I was like, well, what's wrong with me then? And it was stress. So in 2017, I ended up wrapping up my school year and took a 6-month sabbatical to just kind of rethink life and what am I going to do with myself? And that's where I really learned a lot about being able to manage brain, mind, being able to find more comfort in the discomforts of leadership, because it's not like there's just a couple moments of stress and it goes away. It's just something you're signing up for in this work. And so when you're doing that, then you're going to have some ways to manage that and be able to fulfill yourself in ways beyond just the immediate work. And so after that, I ended up, as you mentioned in my bio, supporting the opening of an office in Oakland for a nonprofit that supported Black, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander education leaders. And that was really where I felt like I was able to flourish more as a leader because I had stepped more into the parts of the work that I really loved. I was really clear on why I was leading. I think if you go back through my journey and I think about all the times I took on a VP role and then a principal role and then a district role, it was kind of just lockstep. These are the things you're supposed to do. And it was also a lot of somebody else was like, this is just the next step. You need to do it. And I would say when I made that pivot in 2017, I really sat with, why do I want to lead? How do I want to lead? And what am I supposed to even be leading? And so really getting clear on that, learning all these different ways to kind of manage connecting my mind and my body, I don't feel like I'm in the trenches anymore. And I have moments, but I have a lot of tools now that help me to kind of bring myself out in a way that I just didn't know how to do back then.
Tell me a little bit about some of the things that you offer through your business. I talked already a little bit about coaching, but you also do retreats. And how do you bring in a lot of your trench story to help others?
Yeah, I mean, I always say I want to be what I wish I would have had back then. I wasn't having these deep, profound conversations with a coach about why I was leading, the ways that as a young woman of color, I was navigating a space where there weren't a lot of Latinas who were high school principals in the area that I was in and in the work
Yeah.
I was doing. Nobody was really asking me a lot about my identity related to my leadership and things like that. So my hope is in the work that I've been doing since then, that I am providing for folks the opportunity to be able to ask themselves those questions sooner, to have clarity sooner, so they can actually move into leadership positions that make the most sense for them, and that they have the tools that they need to sustain long term. When I have a person hopping on a call with me and I can already tell like their energy's off, they're kind of spinning a little bit, I can see the heaviness already on them. I'll pause and say, before we even get into a conversation, what do you need right now to actually clear your energy to come into the space? And so we may actually take a few minutes to do some breathing together, to do a little bit of resetting of where their mind is at and what they're doing. Maybe we're going to take a moment for you to get up, move your body, go get a glass of water, come back. And so I'm helping folks to be very conscious of caring for themselves at the same time that they're getting clarity on why they lead. And I want to be a resource to them. So I see myself, once I start working with a client, I see myself as their like 180 support. I mean, before we hopped on this call right now, I got kind of like an emergency text from a client who was just like, this thing just went down with my board and I need to talk about it. And I was like, let me record this podcast and I'm going to hop on the phone with you as soon as I'm done. I want folks to not feel alone. And I want them
Yeah.
to know that they have tools and resources, because there was too many times where I closed the door, had a quick little cry, and then put my sunglasses on and walked campus and did supervision like if nothing was going on. And that's just not sustainable. Human beings are not meant to be that way. So I really want my coaching to be that these people literally have a person alongside of them on their leadership journey, a thought partner, a coach, their cheerleader, and the emergency call that they can make when they need to, because this is not easy work.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of people that don't have somebody, in their school or in their district to reach out to. And when a leader's not taking care of themselves, they can't support their teachers. A lot of the time, the teachers are dealing with a lot of the same stressors, but that also trickles down to the
Mhm.
students. Tell me a little bit about just how you've worked with the university system and Latina leaders across your state, um, and some of the work that you've been doing in these universities with keynotes and things like that.
Yeah. What you just said is usually my ending line, or some part of like the midpoint is where I'm all like, I want
Yeah.
to emphasize, because a lot of times leaders start to think like, well, I can't be focused on myself. I got to figure out cuts right now, or I got to figure out hiring new people, or whatever the latest stressor is in front of them. And the thing I tell them is exactly what you just said. When you are stressed and burnt out and you're spinning, guess what? You're putting that energy on your people. So a teacher is not coming into your office because they want you to stress them about the things that you have going on, right? A student who is dealing with their own stresses at home and maybe at school is coming into your office, and they don't need to be, riled up a little bit more because of the energy that you're bringing into the space. So taking these, I tell folks 2 to 5 minutes, like I'm not asking you to put a whole break in your day. 2 to 5 minutes is actually going to help you to set before you walk into a staff meeting. Or
Yeah.
for some folks, I've said to them, I did a series this past year with an organization down here in Los Angeles where I did 8 talks around the LA area with Latina leaders. And the whole session we did together was on nervous system regulation. And I told them, it's if you can't get yourself calm and straight, then how are you going to navigate people who are trying to do the work that you're doing and you're just putting more stressors on them? So your calm allows them to have more calm and you have more clarity to know how to support them. And one of the things I usually end with is after I help people I love to have people have something they can leave with. I mean, the teacher in me always still needs to have objectives at the beginning. We're going to do that, I do, we do, you do. And then I want you to walk away with some sort of like a homework, so to speak, of how you're going to try this out. And so I usually have them leave with some sort of a nervous system regulation plan for themselves. And then I say, now I want you to think about what the plan's going to be for your team. Because if
Mhm.
it's good for you, it's good for them. So can we start
Yeah.
staff meeting with some sort of a physical check-in? Can we end a meeting that we know has high energy or is likely going to have some stressors in it? Not just having your people then go back to whatever it was they were doing, but can we actually take a pause at the last couple minutes and intentionally close up what we're doing so people have some sort of
Yeah.
closure before they move on to the next thing? But it's hard to do that
Yeah.
when you yourself as a leader are just spinning and spinning. You got to be able to have your calm and your clarity to then be able to offer that and to intentionally build it into what you're doing with your people. So it starts with you, but there's this possibility of this ripple effect, exactly as you said, from me
Yeah.
to a teacher to a student to a family, to a community. We have so much possibility for impact, but we can't see that when we are just, stuck in the thing that's happening right now in this moment.
Yeah, yeah. You talked to me also about there are a lot of people who want to pivot, making, changes, leaving education. They get burned out from leadership. You host a workshop on finding your purpose. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for some folks it means leaving. For some folks it's just understanding why I'm staying. And so when I think
Mhm.
about that 6-month journey I went through where I kind of sat and reflected on what's really happened in the last few years, what did I enjoy about K-12 and what were the parts that probably just weren't a good fit for me? And during that time, I got really clear on the thing I absolutely loved was the mentoring coaching part. I could have sat in my office all day hanging out with teenagers or with first year teachers or with leaders who were kind of looking for guidance and support. So it wasn't that I didn't need to stay in education, but I needed to find a role that was going to help me to do more of that. And so, what I support folks with is most people are not going to be able to take a 6-month sabbatical. That was a privilege and it was a moment in time. I don't know if I'll ever take another one. And so,
Yeah.
I want people to be able to have that same experience, even if they can't walk away from all their responsibilities for 6 months. And so, the program that I put together was helping people once a week. We would meet. I had a whole curriculum, or still have a whole curriculum. And folks were able to just piece by piece, small chunks. I was walking them through the journey of that reflection of understanding how to care for themselves so that they weren't getting wrapped up in stressors and drama in personal or professional life. And then coming up with some clarity. And for some folks, yeah, it might have meant that I had one person who had in college started this organization and they'd kind of let it go because they moved on to their, career. And they were like, you know what? This is a reminder that that actually was my happiest place. That was my purpose. I want to figure out bringing that back. So they didn't leave their job, but they started doing that on the side to start figuring out what it could look like to pivot back into that. I had somebody who was feeling really bad about themselves because they weren't in like the top tier leadership position. And what we found was they're actually happy being the number two. There was absolutely no
Yeah.
reason for them to be pushing themselves and stressing themselves out to move into a different position. So sometimes it's figuring out you might actually be in the right place and do we need to be at peace with that? Or this is not the right seat for me, but I'm clearer now in the work I'm supposed to be doing. Can I get myself to a seat that makes more sense for me? I still very much care deeply about education and students. I still, as much as possible, try to volunteer and be involved in stuff that's happening in schools. I just know that it was not my place long term. At the time, I thought,
Yeah.
I really want to be a superintendent. I would not be as energized and excited and having conversations with people the way that I am right now if I would have gone that route. And I just don't think I would have been my best for people. So this was me figuring out what my appropriate lane was. But for other folks, that is their lane. And they are totally meant to be these like amazing superintendents. God bless them. I just found that that wasn't mine. And I want people to make sure that they're in the place that they belong to have impact and don't feel bad about it, but they're content with it because they know it's the right fit.
Yeah, yeah. You also do one-on-one coaching with people who are in those higher leadership roles, like CEOs, assistant superintendents. Um, what are some of the challenges that they're facing since they're not necessarily facing students, but they're leading a large organization?
Yeah. I mean, if we follow that same thread of having clarity of purpose and understanding, I'm helping them to stay grounded in that. Because what happens is you start moving into seats like CEO seats, superintendency seats, is that you
Yeah,
have a lot more people who have opinions on what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. So you're listening
yeah,
to your board, you're listening to, the people who work in your organization, your community members, whatnot. And there's so many times I can get on a call with somebody and they're telling me what everybody else thinks they should be doing. And I'm like, I'm not here to hear everybody else's opinion. I'm here to help you stay grounded in why you lead. And so sometimes
yeah,
my place is really just helping them to get recentered and regrounded in what there's a reason why you picked that spot in that location with those people. How do we keep you centered in that? And if it starts to feel like there's too much outside external pressure to change what you're doing and who you are, then if you're going to do that, I want you to be really intentional about those decisions and how can I help you to do that? So that goes
yeah,
back to I'm not just somebody you hop on a call with periodically. I'm somebody who is really partnering with you so that I can deeply know you. I've had calls with people where I'll ask a question and they'll just like pause and be like, darn it, that was the thing I needed to hear because I've been going in this total different direction and you're reminding me I'm so off. And it's like they
yeah,
needed that wake up call, that snap to kind of be like, oh, I'm not being me right now because I'm just too distracted by all the opinions of others. So I think a lot of times it's really helping them to get clear. I mean, I always say, I don't know better than anybody else. I don't have these magical answers that I pull out of a hat for you. my responsibility as a coach is to help you have this very intentional space to get all that distraction out of the way so that you can get clear again on why you're leading and how you want to do it. And you have those answers. It's just that oftentimes when we're in a classroom or on a school campus or wherever we might be serving, that we just have so much going on that it's easy to not stay anchored in that why. And so I think when we're getting to those levels, it's not that, I mean, hopefully, if you're a superintendent, I'm not helping you figure out vision anymore and you know why you lead. It's more so I'm helping you stay grounded in that, as opposed to with other folks, it might be just getting clear where you're headed at all.
You've also worked with groups. You had a group coaching group. Would that be something a district would buy for several of their staff? How does that work?
Yeah, I often say I'm still a teacher. I started as a teacher and I'm still a teacher. And so the group coaching is really kind of this space where I get to have very intentional content, very intentional lessons. And if that matches the needs, in this case, students find me. I don't just happen to, have students who are placed in a classroom with me automatically. And so it's a mix. I run it as open and people can individually opt in and join. And then it's just people from all over the country who are kind of in a cohort together. I've also had
Okay.
organizations who've said, we're a large enough organization where we actually have a whole cohort of people we'd like to gather and have you just have our people do this together. And so then I run it particularly for an organization and I might do it more tailored to what they are identifying are the needs. So an example would be I had an organization last year who said, we have these really strong leaders, but we're noticing a lot of them are not applying for promotions. So they should be ready for management, but they're not moving into management. And so my first question is always, have you talked to them and asked them why? What are they saying is the block? And then from there, then I might add in also, here's research that I've read over the years. Here's what I have personally seen after now coaching hundreds of people. And there's data that I collect periodically throughout my groups and things that I do. Here's what I see are trends in leadership and why folks tend to not promote or move on. And so collectively, between what they had and what I had, we put together a program where we wanted to support their people with managing stress. We were supporting them with being able to get reconnected with why they did the work that they did, because some folks were just kind of feeling kind of lost of like, how did I end up here? So helping them with that. Confidence was a big one. So we did a lot of work around confidence and what's holding you back from believing that you actually are ready for that next step. We did work around people being able to understand the difference between setting big, audacious goals and having a vision as a leader, but then being able to pull back and then know what are the next three small steps that are going to move me in that direction. Because sometimes the thought of
Okay.
leadership can be really overwhelming for people because they're like, well, I have to do all these changes in the next year. Like that just feels impossible. It can be if you're looking over there instead of getting narrowed in again and saying, here are three very tangible things I can do in the next week. Great, we knock those out. That means now these are the next three things that are possible in the next month. Cool, we knock that out. And so helping people be
Yeah.
able to have big vision and then small action steps. So we put together a 6-month program that matched their needs and what I have seen with leaders over time. So it's been a mix. It's people opting into a kind of set curriculum that I've put together and then me co-creating with people what they need specifically for their org. At the end of the day, I'm happy to work with a variety of people. I think I want to make sure that I'm still staying at the root of why I started all of this, which is I
Yeah.
want more people moving into leadership who traditionally not have considered themselves leaders. And once you get there, I don't want you to get there and then feel like you're flailing. I want you to be fully supported and I want you to be able to sustain as long as you choose in that role. I don't want you to have to move out because somebody else made the decision for you or you burnt out or something else happened. I want you to be able to have the agency to lead until you're like, I think I'm good. I move on to something else, whatever that might be.
Mhm, mhm. Talk to me a little bit about the domino effect, especially as school year starts and people, shift into new positions. How does that affect the organization a lot of the time, especially if it might not be the right fit or if there's people that have tension with the coworkers?
Yeah, I don't know how we fix this domino effect, but I have some clients I was just having lunch with a couple weeks ago. They were ready to kick off their PD and they also were like, I may have a new role in the next month. And it's
Yeah.
just, because somebody who changed a role in April has just kind of left a domino effect of things that have been happening all summer long. And it just It happens every year. So if we, again, if we know that these are things that naturally happen, how are we putting systems in place to support people when that happens, to not have to kind of quickly drop into something else, but being able to like really truly have a transition of being able to say goodbye and really
Yeah,
process the time. I mean, education is such an intimate space. We become very close with the people that we serve with. And whether or not we're like good friends that hang out outside of work, you're spending a lot of time together. And so, how do we actually allow some closure and some movement out of the place that we've been in? And then really being able to start building relationship and not just get dropped into a new space, but be able to get relationship building and just space to really get to observe and know culture before we move into the new place. So I think being able to build some intentionality in is really important. Not just, again, we can't just throw leaders in and just be like, you'll be great, and then hope that it all works out. So I think some
yeah,
intentionality and really allowing there to be a transition. And then from there, if you ended up in a place that was not your choice, it doesn't mean you can't still be impactful. And the question then becomes, where are the places where you're going to find that there are matches for the things that you're really great at and for your joy?
yeah,
I believe you can find it everywhere. It's just a question of, am I going to get to be 90% in my purpose or 10% in my purpose? But it's still
yeah,
there. So I think it's going to be even more important when you're in a role that you maybe didn't select for yourself to really get clear on, what am I great at? How am I going to let that come to the surface here? And what are some of the things that I actually could get really excited about here? And it may not be everything, but there's got to be something because that's what keeps you in it. So I think that's where I mean, going back to the trenches question, that's where I think I've just really learned we have to really get into our brains and into our mindset in some of these situations because especially in education, there's such large systems that we're navigating that there's a lot of
yeah,
times when you're not going to have a lot of agency in the classroom that you're in, the school site that you're at, the grade level that you work with, or whatever the circumstances are. And so, how are you going to be able to kind of put that mindset together that's going to help you keep showing up every day the best that you can until you can navigate into a space that makes more sense for you? But I think we can always find it. It just may not be the ideal percentage of your day that you get to do it. But then you're really going to have to grasp onto those moments when you really get to fully be in your genius and the things that you really love doing.
yeah, yeah. I think it's important to remember for people who, like you said, might have been transferred, but like, living their purpose to the best of their ability and then thinking about what position they can go into next, but doing the best they can in that current position. I wanted to wrap everything up by asking, out of everything we've talked about today, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I mean, I want everybody to remember that you are a whole being. And so when you're showing up in your work, how can you do that holistically? How are you using your brain power, but also your body? 20% of
Yeah,
what happens in our actions actually comes from our brain, 80% comes from the neck down. But we spend so much time thinking and talking and, going, going, going. That's really only using 20% of what's possible. With the other 80%, that's where we take the pauses to breathe and feel what's happening in our body. That's when we take a moment to slow down and reflect, to hear the intuitive voices within us that kind of already have those answers that we need. There's a whole 80% of our functioning that we just don't incorporate enough into what we do. And if you're struggling to find that time and that space to do it, again, it takes 2 to 5 minutes. It doesn't take a long amount of time. How can you maybe do it with the people around you? If I'm using science terms, like you're self regulating when you're doing it for yourself, but you're co regulating when you're doing it with other people. If I'm a teacher, how can I take those moments throughout the day where it's just planned into our schedule that we're going to take a moment to co regulate together? And you can call it whatever you want with your students, but it's this moment where we're going to take a breather. We're going to check
yeah,
in with ourselves. We're going to see how we're doing. Is there anything we want to reset for the rest of the day? If you're a leader on a campus, how do you do that for your staff? If you are a leader of an organization, how are you embedding that into just the systems and the ways that you engage with your people and as a culture? I
yeah.
think that we spend way too much time just not being holistically aware of all the ways that our power can be used in our seats that we sit in. And so, my reminder to people is to give yourself that 2 to 5 minutes throughout the day. Bring your whole mind and your whole body to the work that you're doing. And I promise you that you will have more impact and you'll be able to reduce your stress along the way and just have more clarity about how you make decisions and engage with the people that you serve on a regular basis.
Well, where can people connect with you and find you online?
So you can find me at my website, michellesejas.com. It's got all the things. On Instagram, you can find me at Thriving Chingona. And on LinkedIn, you can find me at Michelle Sejas, EDD. And I also have a weekly email that I send out, and you can sign up for that on my website. And there I just share weekly reflections, kind of the trends, the things that are coming up in coaching. Even though I can't coach everybody, the hundreds of people who are on my email list, it gives me the opportunity to at least share the tidbits, some takeaways that hopefully help people get some coaching in their inbox at least once a week.
Okay, thank you so much for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast. I'll make sure I get those links in the show notes. And, I hope those who are in need of coaching and want to better live their purpose in their work can reach out to you for more information.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today.